Welcome to all my Late Night Mysteries listeners. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. The fragility of existence and the impermanence of memory remind us that our place in this world is never as secure as we believe. Even the strongest bonds of friendship and the most tangible evidence of our lives can be erased mysteriously by forces beyond our understanding. It is a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of reality and the unsettling idea that what we consider permanent can vanish without a trace, leaving only silence and the haunting question: did we ever indeed exist? I am Wraith. This is Late Night Mysteries. You're listening to Mysterious Encounters Edition.
Disclaimer: this is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, places, events, or incidents are fictitious. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events are purely coincidence.
This is a mysterious fiction tale in which three colleagues, Daniel, Charlie, and Jake, decide to escape the pressures of their demanding jobs at the hospital with a weekend hiking trip into a remote jungle. But what begins as a peaceful retreat quickly becomes a nightmare when they become hopelessly lost. What happens to them next? Well, this is their story. Daniel, Charlie, and Jake were not just friends. They were colleagues who had grown close over the years while working together at a busy urban hospital. The long hours and stressful environment had forged a bond between them, one that extended beyond the hospital walls. They often sought solace in each other's company, finding ways to decompress from the pressures of their jobs. After a particularly grueling stretch of shifts, the three decided they needed a break, a chance to escape the monotony and intensity of their work.
We've got to get out of here for a bit,
Daniel said, rubbing his eyes during a rare moment of downtime.
We need some fresh air. Let's go on that hiking trip we've been talking about.
Charlie nodded in agreement, his tired eyes lighting up at the idea.
Sounds perfect. Let's escape to the jungle. A weekend away from all this madness could do wonders.
Jake leaned back, exhaustion tugging at his body.
I'm in. We need it. Let's leave first thing Friday.
The decision was made. One Friday afternoon, they made a spontaneous decision to go on a weekend hiking trip. The jungle trail they chose was known for its remoteness and challenging terrain, a perfect escape for those looking to disconnect from the world. The trio packed their gear, eager for a few days of adventure and relaxation, away from the beeping machines and sterile walls of the hospital. The hike began as planned. The three friends set out early, marveling at the lush greenery and the vibrant sounds of the jungle. The trail was as remote as promised, with only a few markers to guide them. Daniel led the way, with Charlie and Jake trailing behind, joking and laughing.
Woohoo! This place is amazing!
Charlie said, looking around.
It's hard to believe. We're just a few hours away from the city.
It's like another world.
Jake added, wiping the sweat from his brow.
Exactly what we needed.
But as the day wore on, the trail became less clear. The markers they had been following grew sparse, and the dense foliage seemed to close in around them.
I'm not seeing any more markers,
Daniel said, concern creeping into his voice.
We might have taken a wrong turn.
No big deal.
Charlie said with forced calm.
We'll just backtrack.
By late afternoon, the reality of their situation began to sink in. They were lost. The path they had been following had disappeared, leaving them disoriented in the thick jungle. Their GPS devices were no help. The signal was weak, and the maps were inaccurate in this remote area. The jungle, which had seemed so inviting in the morning, now felt ominous and impenetrable.
We're lost.
Jake finally admitted, his voice shaking.
We should have turned back hours ago.
As night fell, the situation grew dire. The three friends huddled together, trying to figure out what to do. They decided to set up camp and wait for daylight, hoping that the morning light would help them find their way back. But the night they have brought little rest. Strange noises echoed through the jungle, and each of them experienced vivid, unsettling dreams of being pursued by something unseen.
Did you hear that?
Charlie whispered in the middle of the night.
It's probably just an animal.
Daniel replied, though he wasn't sure. When dawn finally broke, they resumed their search for the trail. But no matter which direction they chose, the jungle seemed to twist and turn, leading them in circles. After what felt like an eternity, just when they were beginning to lose hope, they stumbled out of the jungle and onto a dirt road. Exhausted and disoriented, they were quickly found by a search and rescue team that had been dispatched to look for them.
We thought we'd lost you for good.
One of the rescuers said.
Let's get you back to the hospital.
Relief washed over them as they were escorted back to civilization and rushed to the very hospital where they worked. Back at the hospital, things seemed to return to normal. The hospital staff, many of whom were their friends and colleagues, greeted them with a mixture of relief and curiosity. The hospital administration, recognizing the need for the trio to rest, arranged for them to share a wardroom where they could recover.
You're lucky to be alive,
A nurse said, as she helped them settle into their shared wardroom.
That jungle is no joke.
I can't believe we made it back.
Charlie said, lying on her bed.
That was the scariest night of my life.
Same here.
Jake muttered, staring up at the ceiling.
I keep thinking about those dreams. It felt like something was watching us.
Daniel chuckled weakly.
Hey, well, we made it out, didn't we? We're safe.
The story of their ordeal in the jungle quickly spread, becoming a topic of conversation among the staff. The local newspaper even ran a story with the headline, "The three friends are safely found," accompanied by a picture of Daniel, Charlie, and Jake standing together, looking tired but alive. Their families and friends visited them, bringing flowers, food, and words of comfort. The three friends, though still shaken by their experience, began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. The hospital, with its familiar sounds and faces, was a comforting place to be after the chaos of the jungle. But as the day turned into evening, something strange happened. When Charlie and Jake returned to the wardroom after a routine checkup, they found that Daniel was gone. His bed was missing, as if it had never been there. The room that had held 3 beds now held only 2.
Where's Daniel?
Jake asked, his voice rising with concern.
His bed was right here.
Charlie frowned and looked around.
Maybe they moved him to another room?
Confused and alarmed, Charlie and Jake searched the hospital, asking the nurses and doctors if they had seen Daniel. The nurse at the station looked puzzled.
I'm sorry. Who again?
Daniel.
Jake repeated.
Daniel, he was with us when we were found in the jungle. Where is he now?
The nurse shook her head, frowning slightly.
Okay, listen. There were only 2 of you, Charlie and Jake. No one else was admitted.
Charlie stared at the nurse.
That's impossible. We were 3. Check your records.
The nurses checked the records. After an excruciating wait, the nurse returned with a file, which confirmed that only 2 people had been admitted. There was no mention of Daniel. It was as if he had never existed.
Look, I'm very sorry. But it says here there were only 2 hikers found. Only you 2.
The nurse explained. The responses they received were unsettling. The staff looked at them with confusion, insisting that there had only ever been 2 patients, Charlie and Jake. Desperate to prove that Daniel had been with them, Jake ran to the hospital's small convenience store and purchased a copy of the newspaper that had reported their rescue. He hurried back to the wardroom and showed it to Charlie.
Here, look,
he said breathlessly, shoving the paper into Charlie's hands.
Look, read the headline. The 3 friends are safely found. Daniel was right there.
But as Charlie looked at the paper, his face turned pale. The headline had changed. It now read, "The 2 friends are safely found," and the photo showed only Jake and Charlie. Daniel was nowhere to be seen.
Daniel, he's not in the picture.
Charlie whispered. Panic set in. How could this be happening? Just hours earlier, Daniel had been with them, and now it was as if he had been erased from existence. Charlie, usually the calmest of the group, began to show signs of distress.
I'm next.
Charlie muttered as they sat in the wardroom.
I can feel it. Whatever happened to Daniel is going to happen to me.
He grew increasingly paranoid, fearing that he would be the next to disappear. Jake tried to calm him down.
We're going to figure this out. We'll talk to the doctors again. We'll find Daniel.
Jake tried to reassure him, but he could see the same fear reflected in Charlie's eyes that he felt deep within himself. That night, Jake stayed awake, keeping a watchful eye on Charlie. But exhaustion eventually overtook him, and he drifted into a restless sleep. When he awoke the next morning, his worst fear had come true. Charlie's bed was gone, and with it, all traces of his existence. The wardroom now held only one bed, Jake's. Charlie's belongings, which had been neatly arranged on the bedside table, had vanished as well.
Charlie, where are you, Charlie?
He yelled, running into the hallway.
Where is he? Charlie, where is he?
In a state of near panic, Jake ran to the nurses' station and demanded to know what had happened to Charlie. But the nurses, looking at him with pity, insisted that there had never been anyone named Charlie in that room.
Jake, there's no one named Charlie. You were found alone in the jungle.
Jake's heart pounded.
No, we were three. First Daniel, now Charlie. Where are they?
But no one remembered them. It was as though they had never existed. The doctors too were sympathetic, but firm. Jake had been found alone in the jungle. There had been no one else with him. Now alone in the wardroom, Jake was desperate to understand what was happening. He clung to the belief that his friends had been real, that they had shared the experience in the jungle. But as he tried to find evidence of their existence, he was met with dead ends. Jake's world began to unravel. His family, his friends, all of them looked at him with confused expressions when he asked about Daniel and Charlie.
Who are you talking about?
His mother asked, concern lacing her voice.
Jake, you've been through a lot. There was no one else with you.
Even the hospital staff treated him like he was losing his grip on reality.
Check the newspaper.
Jake pleaded, showing the same paper he had looked at countless times. But his family just shook their heads, puzzled.
The article says you were found alone.
As the walls of his world closed in, Jake frantically searched through records, trying to find any proof of Daniel and Charlie's existence. But every trace of them had been erased. The hospital staff treated him as if he were suffering from some mental breakdown, and his family and friends visited him, though concerned, could not remember anyone named Daniel or Charlie. Jake pored over the newspaper repeatedly, but each time he looked, the story seemed more specific. It had always been about a single hiker who had been found alone. His reality was unraveling, and the more he searched for answers, the more elusive they became. It was as if the world itself was conspiring to erase his memories, to make him doubt the very existence of his closest friends. On that evening, Jake, overcome with hopelessness, excused himself to use the bathroom.
I just need a moment.
He muttered. He left the wardroom, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. He entered the bathroom and closed the door behind him. A few seconds later, 2 doctors and a nurse entered the wardroom to discuss the hospital's plans. The wardroom where the 3 friends stayed was empty. No patients, no beds, just bare walls and polished floors. One of the doctors, glancing around, remarked,
"This room will be perfect for the new high isolation ward. We need to prepare for the incoming cases of the new pandemic disease that's sweeping the country."
The nurse, looking around the room, seemed to sense something off with the wardroom's empty space.
But didn't this room have...
She hesitated, as if trying to remember something just out of reach, but then shook her head, dismissing it as nerves. The doctors continued discussing their plans as they exited the room, leaving it silent and empty. In the days that followed, the hospital carried on as usual, preparing for the challenges ahead. The ward that had once held Jake, Daniel, and Charlie was converted into a high isolation unit, its previous occupants forgotten by all who had known them. The jungle too remained silent, its secrets buried deep within its twisted paths. The world moved on, unaware that 3 lives had been erased as though they had never existed. Jake, Daniel, and Charlie, friends, colleagues, and adventurers, had vanished without a trace, leaving no mark on the world they had once inhabited. Their story, like so many others, was lost to time, a reminder of the fragility of existence and the unsettling possibility that we, too, could one day be forgotten. This mystery is forever remain unsolved. The mysterious fiction tale of Jake, Daniel, and Charlie serves as a haunting reminder that our sense of reality and identity is fragile. Even the strongest friendships and the most vivid memories can be erased, leaving us questioning the very fabric of our existence. It underscores the unsettling truth that what we hold dear can be lost in an instant, leaving behind only echoes of a life that might never have been. Well, that's all we have for today. Once again, I am Wraith. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Late Night Mysteries.